Okay, hello everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to Beyond the Steps. I'm Bree, co-founder and CEO of Apollo Performance, here with my friend and co-host Melissa McDaniel, founder of Turning Point Creations, educator, choreographer, and social justice advocate. We're here on Zoom. We're live on Facebook. Hello everybody, and Instagram. If you're joining, make sure you pop over to Facebook Live so you can be part of the discussion. Throughout this episode, you're going to see Melissa and me looking around. It's because we have monitors to our right, to our left. We're chatting on Facebook. We're chatting on Instagram. We want everybody to feel open to participate. We want to hear your open, honest thoughts and questions. That's what we're here for. So make sure you pop the comments in the chat and questions, and we'll get to those throughout the episode. Today we are tackling something that is impacting our industry in a big way. Does hypersexualization exist in competitive dance? To help us answer that question, we're fortunate to have two guest expert panelists who will talk us through the many facets of this topic, and most importantly, where do we start to change the narrative? This is a sensitive topic and may trigger strong feelings and reactions in you. So please protect your peace and step in and out as necessary. Protect your space. Finally, before we introduce our guests, I want to make sure to remind everybody watching to please contribute. Again, pop those questions in. This is an open discussion. We're not here to talk at you. We want to talk with you. No question is silly. And this is a way we can step forward together. So all we ask is that you keep it respectful. So again, pop those comments in the chat or on Zoom or on Facebook Live. And now we're going to introduce our experts. So we have Leslie Scott Zanovitch, who has incredible experience. She's had a great career in the commercial dance space. She's an amazing educator. I can personally attest to that, who's known around the world for her positive, contagious energy and choreography and her impeccable work ethic. She's a public speaker and is passionate about using movement to advocate for change. She is the founder of the nonprofit Youth Protection Advocates in Dance, now known as YPAD Now, which ownership has been transferred to Misty Lown and managed by Emily Sweeney. So hello, I saw Emily on here. Hi, Emily. And their mission is to build empowered dance communities through education and activism and stop exploitation of children and performing arts to keep youth happy, healthy, safe, and dance. And then we have Dr. Tomi-Ann Roberts, is a professional psychology and a chair of psychology department at Colorado College. She earned her BA from Smith College, and her doctor's done tons of research on this topic. And we're just so fortunate to have you both here. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me okay, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. Leslie, Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you now, yes.
Awesome.
So thank you guys for being here. I know that this is something that's been a really hot topic in our industry. So we look forward to chatting with you both, and feel free to just interject any thoughts as we're getting comments as well. We want to hear from you both and have you guys shed some light on this today. So with that, let's get started. Melissa, I think, do you have anything else to add before we get started?
Yeah, really quickly. I know we say this at the beginning of every episode, and we said this as we started the whole series, that we always want to remain kind. We want to remain loving. We want to remain nurturing. We want this to be a safe space for everyone, no matter what your perspective is, because the idea is that perspective, sharing perspectives, learning other perspectives is what this series is all about. It's about taking in the knowledge, chewing it up, digesting it, and figuring out what works best for you to be able to protect and serve the children that we teach every single day even better. So just keeping kindness in the chat, love in the chat, peace in the chat, all those types of things. I want everybody to keep that in mind as we start.
So I'm going to get started. Dr. Tomi-Ann, we hear the word hypersexualization a lot. And for everyone watching, it seems like a simple thing, but define hypersexualization of youth so we're all crystal clear on what that means.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're starting with this question. So I served many years ago on the American Psychological Association task force on the sexualization of girls. Our focus at the time was particularly on girls, and we do know that this problem of hypersexualization is far more a problem for girls, although boys are beginning to get folded into this problem as well. So I do want to just sort of apologize in the beginning that my focus tends to be on girls, given the work that I've done. And my work with the APA task force is how Leslie found me. So we were charged with defining this problem, right? And it's one of those things where we can all say we know it when we see it, and then we have a hard time breaking it down. So our task force came up with 4 features of hypersexualization. One is if you present someone and you say that their value comes entirely from their sexual appeal. That's what makes them valuable. Number 2, if you apply to them a very narrow standard of what is attractive, and that narrow standard is, it says that what's attractive is what is sexy, right? Thirdly, when a person is objectified, when they're made into kind of like a passive thing, just sort of a tool for use by others, if we treat dancers as though they are a tool of ours for us to go and win competitions with them, then we are hypersexualizing them. And then finally, if we impose sexuality inappropriately, right? In other words, if a very young child has a t-shirt that says hottie, right? We're imposing sexuality on someone inappropriately. Now, hypersexualization is very different from healthy sexuality. Healthy sexuality, according to the American Psychological Association, age-appropriate exposure to information about sex and sexuality is healthy. This is different, right? This is different.
So do you think it's possible, knowing what you just said and defining it the way that you did, is competition detrimental, period? Is there any good, can we have dancers compete without doing this? Is that possible?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that what we need to now talk about is how we can begin to identify the types of dance and the types of presentation of dancers that meet this criterion, right? And start rethinking that. Start rethinking about the ways we portray children in dance.
Yeah, that's a lot to chew on right there.
It is, right? It is.
Because that definition, you can dive really deep into that and so many facets and go, oh, we need to do some work here. So
we need to do some work here.
And I think that's what Leslie has been doing for a really long time now in our industry. And I hope people are finally aware and listening. But Leslie, I think a big misconception is that we say hypersexualization exists in competitive dance. We might be talking about choreography where the movement is obviously not age appropriate, or a costume that is too skimpy or not age appropriate. But in fact, it can take on many forms, and it can be many different things. And it can be small things that end up compiling and compounding and having a really big impact. So can you give us some ways that we're consistently seeing hypersexualization present itself in the commercial competitive space?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Tomi-Ann, for that really great definition. I think that one thing I do want to say also is, with YPAD, we're trying to take this word age appropriate and help it not be so vague. To really put some identifying factors on it, because it can feel so hard to grasp onto. It's just, we used to have a hashtag called age appropriate is no longer vague. And I think that, in the dance competition environment, which also translates over into the online platform of dance, because I think that what we're seeing is now we're having 24/7 dance competition online, right?
Right.
You don't have to go to a dance competition to understand what gets the most applause, what gets the most likes, what gets the most hoots and hollers. So what we're seeing in just the artistic endeavor themselves of creating pieces for stage or pieces for publishing on online platforms is music choice. Music choice in and of itself can have very overt and covert aspects of hypersexualization. What are the lyrics? What are we teaching children about their bodies, about that narrow definition of beauty, focusing on body parts over the person as a whole? What are the stereotypes being set forth for people who identify as heterosexual males? What in general is the educational aspect of the music? Then we have the costume. How is the costume bringing forward the entire concept? Because the concept can actually be exacerbated if you have movement, a costume, and a costume and music that then packages these things together that are clearly then inappropriately superimposing hypersexualized content on a child. So a lot of times it's not just one thing. It also, Tomi-Ann talks a lot about this, and we've all seen this, is what's happening from the neck up. What is the look on the child's face? Are they doing, unbroken eye contact with the audience? Tomi-Ann calls it the gaze. Where you're like looking directly into the judge's eyes, and the dancer is not so absorbed in their movement that they don't even remember they're on stage, which is what we're talking about with when a child or a dancer is so absorbed in the movement that they're not even aware that there's a third party that they're kind of performing to. But we see a lot of winking, we see a lot of lip licking, we see a lot of flirtatiousness, we see a lot of young children who naturally at this age would not be doing self-driven flirtatious behavior, but the coach or the student or the choreographer has trained them to flirt with the judge, has trained them to flirt with the audience. And the way that they stand, self-touch is another thing. Touching the body, the way that we have certain dancers touching each other. So it presents in when you think of pieces, music, movement, costume, concept. Those are the 4 areas that in YPAD certification we work with.
Thank you so much for all of that. And we're going to get into YPAD here in a little while. And so it begs the question, right? And we're going to talk about this a little later too, but it really, there's so much responsibility that falls on the educators and the studio owners because they're really the one making the decisions for this child. So is it the organizations? Is it the parents? Is it the educators, the studio owners, the directors, or is it all of the above?
It's all of the above. I mean, this takes every person. It's, our society is an interconnected web. And when we're talking about youth, every single person plays an important role. So it is the parent, it's the leaders of the organizations, it's the agents that are representing these children, it is the choreographers. This is definitely going to be solved through the village because a child does also, they don't need inconsistent messages, from all of these people that are pouring roles into them. I do just want to say in terms of parents look to us as the professionals. So we can't always blame shift everything to say, well, the parent let them in the class. Well, the parent let them do that. The parents, a lot of parents don't realize dance doesn't have a governing body. A lot of parents don't realize you don't need to have any credentialing or any training to get on a convention or to be, to own a competition or to run a dance studio or to get in front of those children. So I think that there is sometimes this idea that we think that parents should know all of this. No, we should know all of this. We should know all of this. We are the professionals. They're coming to us to tell them how to safely engage with their children underneath these topics. So to constantly blame shift to the parents, I think is really unaccountable of our industry. I mean, we are the leaders. We set the tone.
Right, exactly. There's definitely some activity in the chat around what we're talking about. I expect a whole lot more as we move forward. But one of the things talking about responsibility and responsibility shift and blame shift, we have a question about the responsibility from Leslie over in Facebook Live about the responsibility of competitions and judges to discourage this behavior by not rewarding it. Like, what are your thoughts on, and as a competition judge, this is one of the things we're going to actually have a question about this a little bit later. What is the responsibility to penalize inappropriateness, to actually maybe disqualify, or those types of things?
Well, we have a YPAD certified competition called Guidance, GUI, and then Big Dance. They have all gone through educator training. They have all gone through YPAD certification because, we can't fix this problem if we keep rewarding it. So if we can't say this is a problem, but yet it's the one that gets the double gazillion platinum. It's the one, when the most hypersexualized moments in the piece is the one that gets the loudest applause and the most hoots and hollers. So this has to, the only way to fix the problem is to stop rewarding the problem. So I would say, first of all, there has to be communication on the front end. Like if you go to Guidance's registration, they are very aware before you register for a YPAD certified competition, you will get deducted for these things. We can't expect a community who has done something for so long one way to suddenly, without any education, without any informed choice, to change it. So I think that is what competitions have to start to really normalize courage around saying this is what is not going to be accepted on our stage. These are the things that will be deducted on our stage, so that we can stop rewarding behaviors that people like Tomi-Ann has spent the last 30 years of her life researching are actually harmful. Mm-hmm. So I think that it has to be a normal. We have to also get rid of this myth that the only way for a competition to thrive is to have sexualized content. That there's something going on in our culture where we have some scarcity mindset that if we actually did what Tomi-Ann says and we start to reward the pieces that have artistic integrity, that have incredible message movement, that utilize children's bodies in ways that are edifying, that somehow they can't thrive. That is literally a falsehood. It's become a falsehood. Because, look at all the YPAD certified studios. Look at what you guys are doing. Look at all of us that are enjoying amazing careers in dance that do not exploit children to get there.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Melissa, do you want to take the next question for?
Absolutely. So I've said before, I'm a competition judge. So I judge all over the country, and I see thousands of routines in addition to being a teacher. So as a judge, when we see these things on stage, how do you think that we should address them, knowing that these children may hear these critiques? Because I know I let my kids hear their critiques when we get back into the studio. What are some of the things that we can say that, not, like you said, keep a great balance, Dr. Tomi-Ann, of positive sexuality and not making that negative, but not sexualization? Like how should we address that?
I wanted to let Leslie start with this because I've never been involved in competitive dance, and so I don't know how that goes. But I imagine, one of the things that was ironically really eye-opening for Leslie and me, I consider myself the R&D, the research and development arm of YPAD. Mm-hmm. So my students and I are actually doing studies where we're identifying what are the movements, what are the elements that lead viewers to have reactions to dancing that you wouldn't want them to have, right? You don't want naive viewers to look away from a dancer because they're so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Why would you want them to look away? You want them to look at the dancer. And so we've developed this coding system, and we've identified a lot of these movements. And as Leslie pointed out, many of them are actually from the neck up. Yeah. So I think that maybe, and I don't know what to say to you as a judge, but it does feel to me as though delivering feedback that asks the child to consider whether or not they were trying to compel the judge to look at their body as opposed to appreciate and recognize the technique and the flow of the dance itself might be a way to start. Did their teacher train them that they needed to do something with their face to keep the judge looking at their body, mm-hmm. and not at the dance, because that would then qualify for one of those criteria I just mentioned. If we see the body as just a collection of parts, then we are not recognizing that that dancer is a full human being.
And yeah, and that's great. And I would say when we had the educator certification training and all the guy dance competition judges went through it, this was extremely built out. To the point that
with Leslie Scott Zanovitch. Oh, sorry, you guys, I'm not on mute. Sorry about that.
Hello?
Leslie,
Sorry,
yeah,
continue, Leslie. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, no problem. So Melissa, to answer your question, so when we had the adjudicator YPAD certification training, this was the foundation of all of it. And at the way to train people to do it was we actually had performances that had a spectrum of elements of objectification, hypersexualization, inappropriate content, and then how does a judge actually verbally respond to that? Because I think that what is really important is when you, Melissa, are giving that judging as feedback, it is an opportunity for people to engage in education. And if we deliver it in a shaming and blaming way, they're not going to hear a word you say. Yeah. They're going to feel attacked. First of all of us who have choreographed competition pieces know we put a tremendous amount of hours into this. This is it. Our pieces are personal, and by the time that they've gotten on stage, we have spent months, cleaning them, finding your eyelash needs to be stage left exactly. It's like these are personal. These are like our competition pieces become extensions of us sometimes. So we're also needing to know our audience. These are people that can already feel very sensitive about their artwork. So I think it's really important to ask questions in the judging. Hey, I see, I really, really love the beat of this song, but could you consider that the lyrical content of this song is not the best message for this age group, but I love the beat. The beat is great. Oh, wow, the colors of this costume pop. They are amazing on stage, and I can see why you really love the colors of this. However, the style of this costume for this specific age group, I feel is increasing a hypersexualized tone. Could you consider next time choosing a different costume? I see where you're going here with the concept. I feel that you're really passionate about this concept, but I also think that for 10-year-olds, this concept wouldn't be self-driven. Could you consider next time putting a concept on a group of dancers that could actually own this as their own, as you have owned this as your own? But I don't think that 10-year-olds, that this would be a self-driven expression of themselves. So using words like, can you consider, putting in the compliment first about what do you like about the song. The beat is sick. The bass line is dope. I love that. The colors of the costume are great. But using words like would you consider? And then what we recommend, because yes, some of these children are going to be listening to this. So for judges, please do not desecrate something that is really for the choreographer onto a child, because none of this is ever a child's fault. You have to think how many adults these pieces get through. The parents, the studio owner, the educator, the choreographers. Sometimes choreographers bring in other choreographers to take a look and do a last minute cleaning. There are a plethora of adults who have co-signed this. So a child would be very confused if suddenly something that everybody's been rah-rah-rahing over in the rehearsal space is suddenly saying it's not good. And we don't want to shut down, inappropriately direct that to a child. So what I would say then is that competitions need to put in a step where this is said in the judges with problematic pieces, but then there is going to be one-on-one communication with that studio owner and that choreographer. But Melissa, none of this holds any weight if competitions are not willing to go in with standards. It is unfair to not give choreographers and studio owners what I call informed consent. Just like it wouldn't be fair if we go to a doctor and they try to put us on a medication and they don't tell us what to expect or the side effects or we don't have informed choice. If you do not set standards before you take people's money and then you want to deduct them or you want to be punitive to them or you want to say something's not appropriate, but there was no education, then that just creates a divisiveness environment. It's not going to create education. We're not going to create change. We're going to create a situation where they're like angry at the competition, or, you know, all of the things that maybe could go sideways in that area. So this, I think that when Bree said this is a sensitive topic, we need to stop making this a sensitive topic. It is everywhere. How can something that literally is everywhere be so sensitive? You can't go to an airport and walk in a gift shop without being completely bombarded by sexualization in every magazine cover. I couldn't drive down the 405 freeway in LA without being bombarded by billboards with women being objectified and sexualized. How is something that is literally in every aspect of our society, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, TV commercials, movies, Disney, why is it so sensitive? And the fact that we are continuing to allow it to be so sensitive is why it persists, because we will not have transparent conversations about it.
Yeah.
How much do you think artistic expression, like people say, oh, but we don't want to squelch artistic expression?
So I will let Tomi-Ann say, but let me go first on that, and then I'll hit the ball to Tomi-Ann. First of all, when we work with children, we have to have standards with artistic expression. You do not bring 50 Shades of Grey into a kindergarten class as the book club. You don't bring a fully nude model into a 4th grade class for art class. These are things that have appropriate spaces as a child develops. It develops in their brain, in their body, in their emotional, physical, and sexual maturity, and their identity. So this idea that somehow when we take on the role of being role models, influencers, and protectors and advocates of children, that somehow it's squelching my artistic freedom, it to me absolutely discounts my accountability in protecting these children. If you are making a paycheck off of protecting children, it is your obligation to make sure that you do no harm in the process.
Well, and if you have a vision that's not appropriate for that group, then go choreograph on a more mature group of dancers. Just adjust you have to compromise your vision for.
Yes. And I will quote Tina Landon. A lot of people know who Tina Landon is. She was the choreographer, the artistic director of Janet Jackson's Velvet Rope Tour. I mean, Tina Landon is an icon. And she said in one of her YPAD videos, if you cannot figure out how to artistically choreograph for children in an appropriate way, and you think that you are being policed to be asked to do so, then you're really not that creative. I mean, that's Tina Landon's.
That's about as blunt as you can get with it, but yeah.
I don't necessarily speak that blunt, but that's what Tina Landon said. It's like,
true. I mean, if you can't figure it out, then you probably shouldn't be doing that job, right?
Yeah, and then I think Tomi-Ann has some really good insight too about kind of that artistic freedom point, aspect of it.
Well, I'm not sure I do. I can try. I mean, one idea that's always struck me is that I recognized when I first was having these conversations with Leslie would tell me that a lot of choreographers would say things like, these kids don't even know what it is. Like, it's so cute because they don't realize that what they're portraying is this adult sexuality. And that appalled me so much, this idea that you would actually choreograph movements for a child to engage in, and you would think that that was fine because the child doesn't understand. What? That is abuse in my view, right? That is using a child as a tool for your own expression, right? And counting on the child, him or herself, not recognizing it. One of the most profound consequences of being treated in a sexualized way is that you internalize that. You come to view yourself as someone whose value and worth is only gained by your sexualized behavior and appearance because it's been rewarded. And so you internalize it. You're a child. You're trying to figure out, right?
Well, and all the adults around you are, I mean, they're okay with it, seemingly okay with it, and so why wouldn't you? And how much does, because sometimes too, like I know as a director, when I was a teacher and a director, sometimes kids don't know what to do with their face. And sometimes they don't ask, but they'll just come out with these things that you're like, where did you get this from? But how is social media and the
right. Where did they get it from? All the places Leslie just said. Right. Of course, you know, I can remember being in a dressing room with my like 6-year-old niece, and she wanted to try on a bikini swimsuit. And my sister and I were like, no, 6-year-olds don't wear a bikini. You wear a one piece, right? Yeah. She tries this thing on and she does this exotic, erotic dance in front of the mirror. And we're like, what? She knows how to do that. She's seen it everywhere around her all the time, all the time. One idea about what to do with the face that is really striking me as my students and I continue to code dance videos is smiling. Children smile and laugh far more, hundreds and thousands of times more a day than adults. Why are children who are dancing not smiling?
A great point. A great point. Great question. Because it does, I don't know why is that? Because why is that, Melissa? Why are we not telling them just smile? You know, why?
That's a naturally and instinctive thing for a child to do. We know that children smile and laugh thousands of times more a day than adults. Why do they feel like they need to go beyond that?
Why do they feel like they need to go beyond that? That's a great question. It's a great question. Because does it get rewarded more?
Well, I think it does. I think it does, because I think we have a society who for some reason really loves to see packages of pop stars on little people. We think it's funny. It's like what Tomi-Ann says, like we think it's funny when we use those as an object to dress them up, to emulate and behave in ways that a grown adult pop star would. And I think that a lot of it's really just a disconnect, right, Bree? It's not because people are awful. It's not because they want to harm. I mean, I don't think 99.9% of our community who is engaging in this has really thought it through. I think that's why YPAD exists, is to create evidence-based research, to have these kind of robust discussions around them. I think a lot of people, what they're doing is they're just following. Well, they're doing that and that one, and well, they're doing that and that one, and they're doing that and that one. And so there's really, that's the fact that we're not conscious about it, that we're not thinking about the harmful impacts of it, when there is a plethora of research that says that there is. I think that is where the change has and will continue. Podcasts like this that are highlighting conversations like this, YPAD certification, all of the people that do have kids smile, all of my fellow colleagues out there that are putting on concepts on kids that they themselves would have created themselves, you know, things to do with animals, things to do with storytelling, you know, all these, just so many great ideas that I have seen. So I want to really uplift and say that I, as a judge, have seen so many amazing pieces, and I'm sure, Melissa, you have too, so we know it's possible, right? We know it's possible because we've seen it. So I want to really, you know, commend those people, and then I want to commend people who are like me, who might have, I used to be on the other side of this. I used to be extremely hypersexualized, extremely narcissistic, extremely about me, not thinking about the children. And so I just want to also say that change is possible, because I am absolute evidence of that. Once you know better, you do better. Thank you, Maya Angelou. And this isn't about being bad or being awful or purposely trying to hurt children, but this is about when you get new information. When a person like Dr. Tomi-Ann Roberts shares this information, I really need to drive this home. Dr. Roberts has spent 30 years.
A long time.
And also, she is the first research psychologist that I am aware of that has specifically done research in dance specifically. I don't know of any other research.
Thank you for that.
That has done specifically in this area of sexualization, objectification. So I think that this is an amazing opportunity for us to be learn-it-alls, and then to not internalize we're bad, I'm shameful, I'm awful, but to say, wow, I just learned new information, and so now I can change my behavior. And children will be the benefactors.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Dr. Tomi-Ann, because I think that the dance industry needs a lot more attention like that, and research in all regards. I mean, we talk about that on the dance medicine and science side all the time. We need injury statistics. We need sports science and sports medicine to kind of get involved in our industry a little bit more, because we're just a little bit slow to evolve in all ways. And it's not a bad thing, but we need to take this information and catch ourselves up a little bit. So you know, I know in talking to Melissa, we were kind of exchanging experiences, and one of the things that she had mentioned was, in some of her male identifying colleagues, they have a hard time calling out hypersexualization in this space, specifically for fear of being villainized or for being judged for thinking that way. Like, how could you even think that way about a child, you know? Um, so often they'll leave the feedback in making those statements to their female identifying colleagues. Is that wise? Do you have advice for male identifying artists and judges in that position, and how to handle that, and how to handle discomfort when they clearly see hypersexualization happening on stage and they're responsible for giving feedback to that? Leslie, anybody?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll start first
Yeah.
and say that as a social psychologist, one of the things that I'm always trying to help people understand is it turns out we are not always fully in possession of why or how we look at things, right? Studies show, we now know that we're in a terrible moment in our culture of police violence. We know that police violence is racialized. Studies show people, when presented with an African-American man holding an object compared to a white man holding an object, are more likely to think the African-American man is holding a gun, even if what he's holding is a cell phone, right? The person who thinks that does not mean to think that. We have to slow our looking down, and we have to be aware of the implicit biases that are in our architecture. So a man witnessing sexualized dancing is not doing something, right? That architecture of seeing sexualized movements on a female body is what it is, right? And so the onus should not be on those of us who are viewing. The onus should be on all the studios, the choreographers, all of these individuals, right? And us learning about the fact that we are all subject to implicit biases about gender and sexuality and race, and those are on board. And we can't be using little children as tools to play out our fantasies and think that it's funny. It's not funny. When adults are triggered to view these things in the way that they do, right? So all of this is an important part of educating. And I think that one thing that Leslie and I were talking about, as far as our male colleagues, I think that's so important is, so we've mentioned time and time again already today, this idea of an unbroken eye gaze, lip licking, not smiling. This kind of way of viewing an audience member is an invitation to sexuality, right? Now, that male audience member is very disturbed. He looks away, right? It turns out research shows that the only way we can empathize with another human being is to make meaningful mutual eye contact with them. So all of this is a recipe for a big problem, I think, especially for men. They want to look away. Mm-hmm. What we want to ask them to do is not look away, right?
Okay. Yeah. So Tomi-Ann and I had a good back and forth about this. So, and she said this, and I said, and I was like, oh, they can't look away, because if they look away, they miss the opportunity to have the empathy that children are being sexualized and objectified. And one of the things, so I've talked to several male colleagues, and I do just want to say that a fear that so many, why they look away is because they are afraid of an unconscious, inadvertent moment of attraction. an unconscious, kind of like that implicit bias, that architecture that is not even conscious of attraction, arousal. I mean, we know that even in people who have been sexually assaulted, fear and arousal have a lot of the same, chemical components. So it's a fear. They look away because they're afraid. They look away because if they have that moment of that like immediate feeling of it, that they're bad, there's something wrong with them. They want to avoid it because it is so uncomfortable. But in reality, what Tomi-Ann just said is what we need our male identifying colleagues to do, which is to sit through the discomfort, which is to trust that in that moment of their architecture, they also have all this other amazing stuff inside their brain that will click in, that will come and intercept that moment and say, wow, these are children. And this is this is this is harmful, and I need to use my voice to be able to speak up and say something, because it's not just, men are not just uncomfortable because they're attracted to this. Men are uncomfortable also because men are advocates of children, just like women are. Right. Men are allowed to advocate for children just like women are. So I think that by disengaging, we first of all make this now females are the only ones that get to be activists around this. Right. We've had things like that too many in our society. No, we need men's voices. Men's voices need to stick up. So we can't just blame shift this onto the females have to be the ones to protect the children. No, we need the men to sit through the discomfort, get educated, find their voice on this, be kind, be calm, and it's literally not only because they're a man that they're uncomfortable. To get past this idea that it's only because they're a man that they're uncomfortable. No, they're a human being and they're uncomfortable witnessing a child being exploited.
Thank you guys so much. So we want male judges to not look away, to give that constructive feedback in the way that you were suggesting they say it earlier. And we want them to do that. And really, I think the way that we can get male judges to feel comfortable is by encouragement from their organizations, that they are supported within that organization, right? That they're not
right.
backlash if a studio comes and complains that, well, I heard this on my critique, and that organization really has to draw that line in the sand as well.
Right. And to also not feel ashamed if there is that moment of, oh, that intrigues me, that interests me. Our society is bombarded with sexualized and objectified images of the female body all day long. It is not surprising that men's brains are wired in a way that they could have an implicit response to it that is not something that is fully conscious. So to recognize that is something that our culture has created by the way that our brains are neuroplastic and they get wired. And so to really trust themselves, trust their compass, their North Star to protect and love on these children, and to that whatever discomfort that they're feeling, that they will get over that to then help the bigger problem, which is we're there to actually help the discomfort of the children. So it's also, and I do not mean this, I love and respect so many of my male colleagues, but we have to also not make it about their discomfort. So they look away, they say to the female discomfort, you have to handle this, I'm not going to handle this. It can't all be about them being uncomfortable. They need to join this conversation, and we need them to join this conversation.
We need everybody to join in on it.
We need everybody to join this conversation.
Quickly to put a cap on, because this is so robust, like we could go on for days and days and days and days and days about this, but we also have to, as dance educators who are hearing these critiques, be able to receive from a male presenting judge that information without going, oh, such a perv.
I'm not going back there.
You have to be able, so I want just from a heart space, if we have dance, which we do clearly on Facebook Live and here, dance educators to be able to receive that information from male identifying judges as well. And then I also there've been a few questions in the chat about costume. And I want to talk about, specifically the question was, midriffs being shown, specifically for music that is Christian music or music that lyrical routines. But I want to take that even a step further. Is there is there an appropriate time for a midriff, or does it lend itself to what you said before with the intention and the purpose behind the piece? Does it fit? Or is there an age that you think, oh, you should show midriffs, or that's appropriate? What do you think about that?
The specific reference was a costume and lyrical to Christian music, with the example of Via Dolorosa, Ave Maria, Gentle Savior, etc.
Tomi-Ann, you want
to Leslie.
You're gonna give that to me. Oh, thank you for the. Okay. Who's asking this question? What's the person's name?
Tiffany Jane Lime Alfonso.
Okay. Hey, Tiffany. All right. So I will be repeating some of the things that Tomi-Ann has said. So first of all, the reason why Tomi-Ann, can you just explain why you said about the 6-year-old in the bikini? Because let's first just talk about. So when we're talking about the midriff, what we're really talking about is the breasts. That's really what we're talking about.
Right. So we think that what is revealed is what is sexualized. It's often the other way around, right? It's what we've covered. If we cover this area, right? If we cover this area of a 7-year-old who is female, but not a 7-year-old who is male, what are we saying? We're saying that this upper area is a no-no. And so one of the things that midriff costumes do is it's not just that they show us a small child's belly. It's that they say, you may look at this belly and no further up, right? And then of course you do look further up. We're doing studies using an eye tracker with my students, and we are finding that in the more highly sexualized dance videos, with movements, including the facials we've been talking about, costumes like we're talking about, naive viewers end up looking at that chest area way more than they otherwise would, right? So we have to, it's not just about showing skin. It's about what you're not showing sometimes and what it means, right? A naked child is a child getting into the bathtub, right? Now we're putting the child on stage and we're trying to make a decision about what to cover and not cover. Now we're turning them into a site, a display, right? It's not just their body anymore. Now it's their body kind of dismembered by various coverings and uncoverings. That's what Leslie probably wants me to talk about.
Yeah, and the fact that when we do this with a child with no breasts, do you know what I mean? Like in our culture. And this is, by the way, not how it is in every culture. I mean, if you go to other cultures, it is totally appropriate that there is little girls, just like the little boys, running around without their tops on. If you're at the park and there's a fountain and everybody gets in and the little boys take off their tops, and little girls take them off too, because little girls have no breasts. Their chest literally looks nothing like a little boy. It's the same thing.
In those cultures, by the way, it would be considered very, very inappropriate. And in fact, kind of disgusting if a parent put a bikini top on a girl child. It would be considered very problematic.
Because you're saying there's something sexualized about a little girl who has no breasts. So I think that also when in talking about, Tiffany was also saying about, Christian music and all those things. I mean, the thing is that we have, many people in YPAD in the advisory panel that are Christians. I became a Christian years ago, but I was not raised a Christian. I was raised as a Hindu. So I was raised as a Hindu, later in life became a Christian. And I would say that one of the things in our society in general is and it's not just in Christianity, it's in society. If we show the body, it's bad. The body's bad. And there is nothing implicitly sexual about my stomach. This is about my midriff. If I go jogging and it's hot outside and I want to take my shirt off and wear my bra top because it's 90 degrees, I am not self-sexualizing. I am literally doing it because it's functional. It is functional for me because I'm hot in the activity I am doing. Now, if we are purposely putting children in midriff outfits and outfits that reveal the stomach because we are trying to contribute to the attractiveness of their body, we are trying to make the movement look more in that narrow definition of sexy. And then we also exclude. We say, if your stomach looks like this, you get to wear a costume that shows a midriff. But if your stomach looks like this, then you do not. You don't qualify. You don't qualify because there's something offensive about a stomach that doesn't fit this narrow definition. And so the midriff in itself is not sexualized. A torso is a torso. Just like when I taught in Uganda, and I went to church, and there are kids getting it. They're shaking, they're gyrating, they're moving in church, worshiping, literally shaking their bottoms, moving their hips, but they are doing it with smiles on their faces. They are doing it to drum beats. I mean, it's like, so it's the exact same thing. Moving the hips and body rolls is not in itself problematic.
It's intent. So I'm hearing you say it's intent. It's
intent. It's so when I go jogging and it's hot and I take my shirt off, that's one thing. But then what happens if I jog by the construction workers and then they whistle at me?
Right.
But if I ran by them with my shirt on, they wouldn't have whistled. Right. So do you understand how like there is an issue in our society with there is no chance for us to show our bodies because we have sexualized the body to such an extent that it's become so insidious and so pervasive that this idea that this idea of just showing the midriff, immediately it's sexualized. Why? Because we already have decided that one midriff is in and another midriff is out. We've already decided that if you show a midriff, you do a million other things around that. Our pop stars show this, our viral teachers show this. You do a million other bells and whistles around that exposed midriff that sexualize the midriff. So then the exposure of the midriff becomes a part of sexualization. And also then what we do is we internalize. We diet down, we feel shame, because we need that midriff has now become a badge of you are fit, you are sexy, you are in. So now we have all of these dancers who are so afraid to ever show their stomach in a half top because it is clear their stomach doesn't qualify as good. And so now we're getting into body image issues. Now we get into disordered eating. That's why you cannot talk about sexualization without talking about body image, without talking about disordered eating, without talking about sex abuse, because none of these things live in silos on their own. They are all interconnected. They're all interconnected.
This is so deep and it's so interwoven that you really can't talk about one without talking about the other.
And on the midriff, I just want to say, when I used to travel, when I was executive director of YPAD for 7 years, and I traveled and I did seminars directly with children, I will say it is so interesting how adults superimpose on a child that a child who might have more of a belly would be embarrassed. And you know what was interesting? Anecdotally, nope. It was the children that actually fit into the narrow definition that were praised constantly about how flat their stomach is and how their obliques popped and that their identity became so deeply rooted in their aesthetics that actually were the ones that felt anxiety and stress about exposing the bodies. A lot of times it was the other children that they didn't care because their self-esteem and their identity wasn't totally woven into body comments.
Yep. Exactly. It makes so much sense. Exactly. It makes so much sense. Thank you, guys.
It's just like I said, this is so big. I mean, it's just, we are definitely going to expand on this in future weeks and talk about all the things that have come out of this. But I do want to just to kind of, because we're going to move on to what the actionable items are after this, but just to even put a pin in this and put a cap on it, to just go back to the, as dance educators, as competition owners, as judges, what I think it was Leslie who said about the courage. You have to step forward with the courage to do what is different. What is good, but unfortunately what's good is now what's different. To be able to step out there and say, I am not going to do this to my students. We are not going to reward this for the dancers on stage, knowing that there may be loss of money and there may be loss of business and there may be blowback. But if we can all take a step forward in courage to do what is different and what is right, then we can actually make some headway here. So actionable steps. I think Bree has the actionable steps over there.
So also, I did want to answer Elizabeth's question if we have a second, just because it's a great question in the chat.
Let's get to her. So Elizabeth Kessler says, how can we prevent the sexualization of young dancers and also allow them to find that healthy sexuality as they grow? I want to protect dancers, but never want them to believe their body or sexuality is bad or shameful.
So I also want to tag team this with Dr. Tomi-Ann, but I want to say, Elizabeth, great question. And I think that, I was in Hollywood for almost 20 years. I taught at Millennium for 12 years, and I taught at Edge for 14 years on faculty, and I've traveled everywhere. And I think one of the things that we have gotten kind of confused, that has been hijacked, is this idea that sex is performative. This idea that sex is now performative. And what is interesting is when Tomi-Ann's going to talk about healthy sexuality actually has nothing, like, it is not actually, how we see sex is actually not healthy sexuality. So the way we grow healthy sexuality has nothing to do with what we are seeing as sex in our society, because healthy sexuality is not about intercourse. It's not about what our body looks like. It's not about us being effable. It's not about any of that. Healthy sexuality is about being in a mutual relationship with somebody that we trust, that respects us, that we feel safe. It's about being vulnerable. It's about being supported. It's about being accepted. It's about having people around you that can love on you, that can notice changes in you, that comes and talks to you. This actually grows healthy sexuality, because healthy sexuality requires us to learn body agency. And if you do not know that it is okay to say no, then it sets you up to then be somebody who is a target for sex abuse, be somebody who is a target for somebody to hypersexualize a movement. So healthy sexuality actually has nothing to do with what our culture says sex is, if that makes sense. Meaning the way that we made it performative. So this idea that children, to grow in their sexuality, somehow have to get on stage and do anything with it. Like, healthy sex is literally not true. You know what would support healthy sexuality? What Tomi-Ann said. Putting pieces on kids that is a topic that they actually can resonate with. Because that grows their intellect, that grows their emotional depth, that grows their freedom of expression, and that grows their sense of value. And then in turn, they will pick people and they will feel people that honor that essence, and they will be able to engage in a healthy sexual relationship, which is not about if I'm cellulite free, which is not about how flat my stomach is, which is not about how good I can pout my lips, which is not about how many viral videos I have. Healthy sexuality is not that. So I think what I can do now is hit it to Tomi-Ann, and she can tell you what it is. I mean, I hope that what I just said kind of makes sense, Elizabeth. But yeah. So go ahead, Tomi-Ann.
No, I mean, Leslie's one of these people who's like, she should be in my field, because she knows all these things intuitively that we actually study, right? So one thing that Leslie has just conveyed is that for some reason now, and it's not just for some reason, it's the fact that we are now a completely and 100% visual, digitally mediated culture. So sexuality has moved into what I would call the achievement domain, as opposed to the affiliation domain. Sex is about affiliating, right? Sex is about interacting with other individuals, right? We have the kind of sexual activity we can do with ourselves, yes, absolutely. But even that is about relating to myself. I won't say the words, right? Okay. Other kinds of sexual engagements are interacting with another individual, and that's an affiliative domain. What we've now done is we've moved sex and sexuality into the achievement domain. How many likes can you get for your sexy selfie? How much can you win with the display and the projection and the performance of your sexuality? What, right? That's, you should be working on winning your math test. You should be working on achieving in the domains of school and sports and dance and all your
friendships and family relationships, all of those.
Yes, right. Those are your achievement domains.
Tomi-Ann, can you share what the American Psychological Association found out about cognitive abilities when there is sexualization and self-objectifying?
Oh yeah. So one of the things we have to think about here as we are talking is that really we have to consider that there are two hugely problematic effects of hypersexualization, right? One is the effect on us, viewers, right? Adults, other people watching hypersexualized dancing. What do we see when we see these sexualized youth? Well, we've talked about it. We've talked about how uncomfortable men feel. We've talked, right? Okay. But the bigger question, and the one for me as a psychologist that I'm the most concerned with, is what are the long-term consequences of youth themselves internalizing this perspective on who they are? And we know from 20 years of research that when you are flooded with a perspective of yourself that what matters about you is how sexy you are, you no longer have cognitive resources available to do your math test. We show in studies when you ask people to think about their sexualized body and then do something challenging, they can't do the challenging thing as well. There is a brain drain that we are now experiencing by hypersexualization.
Yes, and when Tomi-Ann says I should be in this field, well, I am in this field because I used to be the person that had the brain drain, that I was so obsessed and completely preoccupied with this idea in Hollywood to keep myself sexual, I was self-sexualizing. I internalized it, self-objectifying. So my choreography and everything I did flowed from that space. And I 100% fit the evidence-based research. I didn't do well in other areas of my life. And I was falling apart mentally. And I may have looked fit, but I certainly wasn't doing fit behaviors in order to get that aesthetic. So this is literally one of the biggest reasons why I started YPAD. Okay, so I'm so sorry that we just went down that path, but I thought it was...
There's so much to talk about, and we are not ignoring it. We are going to get to all these topics in future episodes, and hopefully have Leslie and Dr. Tomi-Ann back with us on future episodes. This is not the entire conversation by any stretch. So we're trying to hone in on hypersexualization today, but the subtopics from that, we will get to them, we promise, and we will come back and address it all. If you do have questions you want us to address in future episodes, please put them in the comments or the chat, or you can email them info@apolloperformance.com. So there are, we agree that hypersexualization exists, and now there's the research that shows how harmful it is to children and young dancers. But we want to go beyond the conversations. I think one of my biggest frustrations being on this journey, and things I talk to Casey and Melissa about a lot, is action. And how do we change it? Because it's been going on for so long. And Leslie, something you said to me the last time we chatted, I think it was on Insta Live, you said, well, how do we change it? And I said, it just frustrates me because nothing gets done. And you said you've been working on this forever, and people shut you down and didn't listen to you. And really the biggest thing that we can do is education. It's what inspired us to do the Steps Initiative, this series. I know, Leslie, it's what motivates you. Dr. Tomi-Ann, it's what motivates you. So we would love to hear from each of you, and you can, whoever wants to go first is fine, but what is one thing in your opinion that we can do now collectively to start taking a step towards change in this regard?
Do you want me to go? You want to go, Tomi-Ann?
I think maybe I'll start, because I know Leslie will have a lot more specific suggestions. But one of the things Leslie always says is, and I'll just repeat it here, is that we have to stop shaming and blaming others and ourselves, right? So we have to slow it down. We have to recognize we all grew up in a society that wants to tell us that female bodies are worth only one thing. We all grew up in a society that's racialized and sexualized and ableized and classicized, and we are all bringing that to this project. And we need to stop and recognize that children deserve for us to take a minute, stop naming and shaming and blaming, and recognizing that if we can slow down, if we can have more workshops like this, we can begin to undo this. We can begin to undo it. And we want to say the whole time that the reason we want to do that is for kids. Because these are kids that are going to grow up and be the next great choreographers. And they're going to take the mantle and do this work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it's about them. It's not about our guilt and our shame and maybe the part maybe that we contributed to this. It's about, like you said, undoing and unraveling. So with that, Leslie, what is
the past is the past.
Yeah. We got to move forward.
You know, I am always going to come back to this because it is truly, in my opinion, that profound. Get YPAD certified. It is not because I am the founder and I created YPAD certification, but you know who I created it with? Amazing people like Dr. Tomi-Ann, Dr. Christina Donaldson, Katie Gatlin, Misty Lown, all these amazing therapists. Change cannot happen if it only is here. Okay, yeah, we know it's kind of bad. It has to go here into the heart. And when you go through YPAD certification that has modules on eating, we connect the web. It is a web that is connected. And when you get the language and the inspiration, it's kind of like people who believe in something, but then if they actually go and protest, it's like you get much more invested in the cause because you're just like, it like amps you up and you're just like, oh, I get this now. I'm more educated. It's like education is not just a word. It is an action. And then you know what happens is then also you get into a community. Like one of the visions of YPAD, and we have thousands of YPAD certified educators. We have hundreds of YPAD certified studios. But like YPAD is developed so that it should be this golden standard. There shouldn't be a competition that hasn't gone through YPAD. There shouldn't be a studio it's first of all, it's free will choice. It's not, we don't want to be some government agency that's imposing education on people, but it should be when you educate, you self-regulate. When you educate, you self-regulate. And just like, you hear our passion and your passion, the only reason why we did this is because we started to educate ourselves. And then once you know more, you're like, I got to share this. Oh my goodness, that makes so much sense. It just felt visceral. But now, like when I met Tomi-Ann, I was like, everything that I'm going through, you have put now into, scientific evidence. It's like it is this beautiful tool, the education to set standards where things aren't weird and they're not vague and they're not ambiguous and we have training in YPAD how to be an advocate that doesn't shame, that doesn't blame, that is inclusive, that because it doesn't matter if I sit down at the table all day long with people who think like me. I want to be at the table who don't think like me. I want to be at the table with the people who are actually creating the content that YPAD was founded to counteract. Because if I can't change if I am not able to engage with the people that are doing those behaviors, and I can't engage with those people if I've shamed them and attacked them to the fact that they think I'm going to eat them for dinner, so they're not going to come to my table. Yeah. So I think that we have YPAD certification coming up, a digital course. Tomi-Ann will be one of the educators on it. Dr. Christina, Katie Gatlin, Mr. Richard, Misty Lown, me. Normally, YPAD is an online self-driven course, but we're doing a 6-week digital course. And it starts on October 26th. It's going to go from October 26th through November 30th. It's every Monday. 10:30 to 12:30 p.m. CST, and it's an interactive opportunity to get YPAD certified. We have a module on sex abuse and prevention and awareness, a module on sexualization and objectification, eating disorders, nutrition, body image, social media management. Social media impacts all of this. Injury prevention, emergency procedures for your studio, and it's not just for studio owners and educators, it's also for parents. Because we have to get the parents to get courage too. Because at the end of the day, really, if the parents are the gatekeepers, if they don't write the checks, the parents are the ones that can vote with their consumer dollars. If they stop writing checks to competitions and conventions that exploit their children, then literally whether these people change their heart and mind doesn't matter, because they're going to have to change their ethos because they won't be able to make money commodifying children anymore. So we have to get the parents involved. So I invite parents to come take this certification, even though it's geared towards educators. There's no doubt that every parent that has taken it walked away feeling so much more equipped to advocate for the safety and the health of their child.
Thank you so much. And to get that certification, you can go to ypad.com. It's
YPAD Now.
YPAD Now, YPADnow.com, YPADNOW.com, and you can sign up for their 6-week digital certification. They are fantastic. And so one more thing I want to leave you with, and then I know Melissa is going to close us out, but so you said parents write the checks. That's really, I think, the issue with the dance community in general is everybody's worried about that dollar, right? The conventions and the competitions are worried about that dollar, that if they upset the studios won't come back. They'll just go to the next one. They have these policies written for the competitions and conventions, but they're not necessarily adhered to. The studio directors don't want to, they want to win, because if they win, it brings money to their studio. More people want to go there. Parents don't really know. They want to be part of something amazing, and they want their kid to be part of something amazing. So they kind of sometimes go along with something that there may be an inner monologue going on that this isn't right. They're red flags. This isn't right, but they go along with it because they just don't know any better, and they trust these organizations. So it is a vicious cycle. And so how do we hold these upper level organizations, because it really is a top down thing, it trickles down. How do we hold them accountable? What are some things that we can do to hold these organizations accountable and make sure that they are taking a stance on hypersexualization?
Tomi-Ann, you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I think part of what Leslie's saying is that when you get YPAD certified, you can recognize things. I think, for example, imagine we now know that heading the ball in soccer yields profoundly problematic cognitive effects on young kids. And so there have been many movements to get heading the ball to be disallowed for children under the age of 18. We need to now consider that hypersexualization, if it really does result in the problematic cognitive and physical and mental health effects, is a danger to our kids. So now we need to say, okay, let's start a movement where we don't name and blame. We don't say that there are a few bad apples who are doing bad things to our kids. We all join together and we recognize here are some scientifically proven things that we need to stop doing. We need to recognize that age appropriate, it doesn't need to be vague. Just like it's not vague to say heading the ball is not okay if you're under 18. Your brain is still developing, right? So I think we need to start thinking along the same lines of how we protect young athletes in the same way that we need to protect children from sexualization in dance. It's the same. It's the same.
Yeah, and I would say also is, make a relationship with the people in charge. Write the artistic director, write the owner, ask them, what do you have in place? Take people to task in a very kind way. Ask them, what is not even just that, but what if there's an emergency? Do you have something in place if there's an active shooter? Do you have something in place if there's a tornado? Do you, the days of us housing hundreds of children underneath one roof and having literally no emergency response for anything has to stop. We are in the 911 people. So what do you have in place to ensure that if I bring my grandparents and my uncles and aunts and my young kids to watch the competition, what are you doing to ensure to me that you're saying this is a family friendly event? What are you doing to ensure it actually is a family friendly event? Ask people, what are they doing? What are the steps? What are the regulations? I want to see it. I want a link. I want a language. And so as a consumer, you press people to hold them accountable to a higher level, and then they hopefully can seek out groups like YPAD or other groups out there, or they can create their own standards, and they will change this shift into this unaccountable, I'm not really going to do, it's too sensitive to talk about, whatever, we'll just placate them, it's not a big deal. All of this stuff that has just gotten us into the mess that we are, we're the elephant in the room now. We have children who are being harmed. We have children with eating disorders. We have children who are creating viral platforms based on sexualizing themselves now. I am no longer going to say, like I did 10, 11 years ago, I vision casted where we were going to be here today and no one wanted to hear it. Well, we are here. We are here. And and you know what the best thing about this, Bree and Melissa and the audience is there's a solution. There is a solution. It's called education. Education leads to self-regulation. When we self-regulate, the children are benefactors. And YPAD certification gives you the why. Because I do not want any of us to be children who say, don't show that midriff. Don't lick your lips. Don't wink at the camera. How dare you do a sexy selfie? What are you talking about? How dare they do that? That is literally, that is victim shaming. That is shaming the victims of this hypersexualized, objectified society. So that is not the way to go about doing this. So we need to be educating to change our behaviors, bring the children in on that. They will feel it. Let me tell you, they will feel it. They will feel the difference. Oh, yeah. And in that, we shift the entire projection of our industry, and we protect the next generation, and we model that. And courage, like Melissa said, is a part of that, because I really want to tell everybody out there, let me tell you, you're not going to go through what I went through. I was blackballed. My agent didn't hire me. I didn't get invited anywhere. I lost the majority of my friends. Like, guess what? Keeping kids happy, healthy, and safe in dance is trending finally. Oh my gosh, I'm finally cool. It's like, what? You know, it's like, I arrived. Like, I've been doing it.
You were always cool.
But literally, like the risk, the collateral damage of speaking out when I was speaking out is literally not there right now. Like, but you know why, Bree? Is because it's gotten so bad. Now we have so many more sufferings and so many more things. It's like, the reason it's trending is because we've hit, the crescendo has happened. And that's not a good thing. But guess what? The time to speak up is now, is because your chances of being blackballed or dismissed is like not in the space. And now it's kind of like, if you don't speak out about it, you're not cool. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, like, and I just want to say, I'm going to pat myself. I knew this moment would come.
I know you did. You have been talking about this for a long time. I remember when you founded YPAD. I remember being in LA, and I remember it all. And you have been very consistent and very unwavering in your mission. And for that, we're so grateful. And that is your actionable item, people. You go to ypadnow.com and strongly consider getting their digital certification. Consider it professional development. And if you're working with children, it's just something you need to do. There is nobody that's going to do this for you. You have to do the work. We're all doing the work. It's a journey. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. So
Bree, can you just join me in thanking Misty Lown also? Because yeah. I know people on this call might not know, but YPAD was going to shut down because my husband, me, and my toddler could not continue to travel around the world and be the YPAD missionaries. And, you know, Misty Lown was a advisory board member. She was our first visionary sponsor. And, you know, she took over YPAD. And yes, I'm still on the advisory panel. I'm still involved. But, you know, this was a mission that became so big so quick. We didn't have the infrastructure and the resources to continue it. So I so appreciate your kind words to me about what I have done in the YPAD mission, but we have to also really acknowledge that YPAD was given, YPAD was a 60-hour-a-week job for my husband and I each, and it wasn't sustainable. And now it has a home that is able to, it's like my baby, and I'm like, its shoes fit. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, it's not wearing a onesie that doesn't fit it anymore. It's like, so I just want to thank Misty Lown and, you know, and Emily Sweeney and everybody at More Than Just Great Dancing that has poured into YPAD, and all of the advisory panel members, not just Tomi-Ann, but Tiffany Prout-Lateo and Katie Gatlin and Dr. Christina, like these advisory panel members are literally like the best of our society. And and you and Melissa, like, thank you, because even you, Bree, I have seen your activism and your courage grow in the last few years.
Yes, very much so. Yes, very much.
Yes, and I just want to thank you both for really prioritizing this. And I mean, truly, just, it has been a blessing to work with both of you. And I just thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we've partnered with YPAD for a long time, and we're so proud and so grateful to be aligned with you guys, and your message and your leadership is just so much appreciated. And we do adore Misty and her team at More Than Just Great Dancing. They're another great partner of Apollo's. Thank you for that. And so all of this leadership has got to go somewhere. And so everybody's got their homework. Everybody has their next step until next week. You go to ypadnow.com and get their digital certification. Melissa?
Absolutely. So like we said, this is definitely going to bubble into so many more conversations. So you will hear from Leslie and you will hear from Tomi-Ann way more as we continue to grow in the series. Also, just so you know, I'm going to put in the chat also the Beyond the Steps program that Apollo actually sponsors that has some elements of YPAD work in it. So you can definitely access that as well. It's not an easy topic, but like Leslie said, we have to normalize this. It can't be sensitive and uncomfortable and we move away from it. It is very, very necessary. So we have to move forward with it. Thank you so much, Leslie and Tomi-Ann, for just discussing this with so much professionalism and so much grace. We appreciate you. We couldn't have done it without you at all. If y'all will quickly, Dr. Roberts, share your social media handles and websites if you have them specifically.
Yeah, I'll put them in here. I'll put them in the chat.
Okay. If you could say them for our Facebook Live family out there, because they can't see the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I don't do a lot of social media, but I am on Instagram and my handle is bizarre. It's Teeters18, Teeters 18. Mm-hmm. And my handle on Twitter is periodically yours, because I actually collaborate with You by Kotex to help girls feel good about menstruation and good about their bodies as menstruating bodies. So periodically yours is my handle on Twitter.
All right. What about you, Leslie? Social media handles?
Like Tomi-Ann, I'm not on very often, but you can count on me to be in the trenches behind the scenes doing the work. I'm at Leslie Scott Says on Instagram, and I'm at Leslie Scott Dance, I believe it is, on Facebook. So yeah, yes.
Awesome. The recording of this episode, full episode, is going to be on IGTV at Apollo Performance. We're also going to, if you signed up on Zoom, you're going to get it by email after this. So you will be able to review it and take notes and catch all those awesome things that you missed during the chat. And I'm honored to do this work every single week with my friend Bree. So next Friday, we'll be back on at 2 p.m., same time, with Dr. Jeff Russell. And we're going to talk about why studios should embrace dance science. Why studios should embrace dance science. It's not scary, it's not spooky, it's something that needs to be done. So we're going to talk about the why of that. But until then, enjoy your journey beyond the steps. Take a deep breath. It's a lot to take in, but make sure you do your homework, and we will see you next Friday on Zoom or on Facebook Live at Apollo Performance. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.